Hello, and welcome to the Mindful Teacher website. My name is Dennis Shirley. I'm a professor of education at the Lynch School of Education at Boston College. And today I'm doing an interview with Stephani Burton, one of the participants in the Mindful Teacher seminar. Stephani, could you please tell us how you came to join the seminar and what you encountered when you joined our group?
I actually learned about the Mindful Teacher group from a teacher who was working in the same school. And she told me about how it met on Saturdays and how she had met some other teachers within the district. And when I came to the first meeting, I had the opportunity to talk to people of different disciplines, teachers who had a number of years of experience, and it was just a really strong sense of community. So it was a wonderful experience from the start.
Thank you. Could you please tell our viewers a little bit more about the nature of the conversations and the atmosphere in the Mindful Teacher seminar?
It took me by surprise. It was the first time that I was in a room with other teachers and the conversation was focused on our practice and our students exclusively. It really caught me off guard because I had all these ideas of what typical professional development settings were like, and this wasn't like that at all. It just felt very natural, and it felt very purposeful in a way that other experiences hadn't.
So one of the themes that seems to come up a lot in conversations with teachers today is that there are a number of distractions that are in the schools. And some of the distractions are things that students bring with them, but some of the distractions are things that we educators or policymakers or the broader community is placing in between the teaching and the learning that we hope to transpire within schools. From your perspective, what are some of the distractions that teachers are facing in schools today?
I think the pressure that comes along with all of those demands, and then the pressure that teachers put on themselves to meet the needs of the students really changes the way that we approach instruction. In some ways, it's not intentionally, but the sort of logistics become the top priority instead of being mindful in the classroom. And mindfulness has to be intentional, which means that you have to decide from the beginning that you're going to dedicate the time to invest what it requires. And it's difficult to take that risk when you don't know what the benefit is going to be because you haven't done it before. And you have all of these other pressures coming from different directions and different communities that haven't done work with mindfulness and maybe don't agree with the methods or don't believe that it could be beneficial.
Well, this all seems to get us back to a fundamental question which has to do with how would we know if we were in a classroom in which a teacher was demonstrating mindful teaching, and how would we know if we were in a classroom where a teacher was demonstrating its opposite, an absence of mindful teaching?
So I think in a mindful classroom, the work is intentional and engaging. I think you'd see multiple interactions between the students, between the teacher and the students, and just whether it's the conversations that are taking place or the activities that are taking place, everyone is fully engaged. And that looks different from what you see in the traditional classroom because everybody engages in different ways. So what is a mindful practice for me in one activity may look different than a mindful practice for somebody else. So everyone's not always doing the same thing, but everyone is working towards a common goal in a way that's building on everyone's learning and understanding.
So in our Mindful Teacher seminars, we tried a number of different practices. We used a tuning protocol from the Coalition of Essential Schools, which we modified into a mindfulness attunement protocol. We sometimes did some yoga. We sometimes did some guided meditation practices. We had all different kinds of structures for facilitating exchange and communication of ideas and experiences with one another. Were any of these experiences or practices particularly helpful for you as a classroom teacher?
I think there were a few of them. It would be difficult to narrow it down to one. The meditations, that was a really useful and very practical way of approaching mindfulness, and it was something that I wanted to continue. And even before mindful teaching, the Mindful Teacher Project, before my participation, I wanted to do those things, but in some ways I felt guilty about doing it because my perception was that I wasn't doing anything if I was sitting and meditating, and that I should constantly be working, or, whether it's tweaking lesson plans or gathering materials or connecting with parents and things like that. And so it was nice to have a space where I was in a community, so I had support in doing it. And it was also just a great experience to practice so that it became one of the habits that I incorporated on my own. So even when I would come into the classroom early, I would just set the alarm on my phone and say, okay, for these 10 minutes, I'm just going to sit and meditate and prepare myself for class.
So when you were meditating before class, do you think your students noticed anything different about you on those particular days?
I don't know that they would be able to recognize a shift, but I noticed a change in the way that they engaged in the classroom. So I think their perception might be in terms of how they interacted with materials or with lessons, or even with one another, the opportunities that I was able to provide. There was definitely a change there. I don't know what their perception of that would be, though.
So one of the things we're finding out as we go along is that even if teachers are building contemplative practices into their teaching and into the students' learning in the course of a school day, mindfulness practices in and of their own can't solve all of the problems of a school. What do you think are some of the limitations of contemplative practices that educators should be aware of as we attempt to move forward in improving our schools?
I don't see mindful teaching as a cure-all, but I do think it's a starting point. I think it provides the opportunity for teachers to build a foundation, and that allows students to later access other areas of curricula that they wouldn't have accessibility to otherwise. It speaks to the actual person, the actual student, and it allows them to engage in a safe way, and it builds community in the classroom. And I don't think that you could teach anything else with real intention and with real purpose unless it's coming from a mindful perspective. I think there are teachers who are currently doing work that is similar and may not realize the way it already aligns with some of the mindful practices. And I think those are the teachers that tend to be more successful in connecting with their students in ways that translate into, their learning and overall achievement.
Are there any other ideas you would like to share with visitors to the Mindful Teacher website?
It began as something that I learned about and just sort of entered into. And what I loved about the program was I could walk away with things that I could use in my classroom, but it also taught me how to build community with the other teachers in my school. So I could practice mindfulness in a community at my school with other colleagues, and I could learn from them and they could learn from me. I felt like I had something to offer them, and it definitely changed the way I approached my work and the way that I interacted with the people at my school.
Thank you very much for your participation, Stephani Burton. Stephani Burton is now a doctoral student in the Curriculum and Instruction program at the Lynch School of Education at Boston College.